Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Today is another great show. You know, I remember reading a study many years ago that the symptoms of Parkinson's disease actually show up about 10 years before anything really starts to go wrong with your motor skills. And it's in your gut. Constipation, severe constipation was one of the early symptoms, chronic, for years. And they tied that constipation to a change in the gut that actually promoted the onset of Parkinson's disease. That was when my sister wasn't alive, but she had died. She was misdiagnosed with PD, but she had a gut problem. There's no doubt about it. She was a little tiny thing, weighed 115 pounds. She snored like a freight train, and she had a severely distended gut. And even my cousin Rosemary, who took care of her for a couple of years, said, I've never seen such a little girl with such a big belly. And sometimes gut issues show up by those types of indicators where the shape of the gut is changing, or it seems inflamed and swollen, or sometimes it's sleep apnea. The swelling from the gut comes up and the throat get narrows from the swelling, and now you snore all of a sudden, and you're not an overweight person. You don't have a big circumference to your neck. Or they are digestive issues where certain foods you just can't eat anymore because they bloat you, that you don't feel good. You literally feel hungover from certain foods. These are warning signs. And sadly, the medical orthodoxy will tell you to take a proton pump inhibitor or something like that. Excuse me, I had to clear my throat. I'm losing my voice. I had 6 Zoom calls yesterday. I was talking until 8 o'clock at night last night. But anyway, you cannot ignore gut problems. That commercial, I railed against it for years with Larry, the cable guy. When the food you don't like, the food you love doesn't love you, use Prilosec. And it had the hot dog slapping him in the face. And I started saying when that commercial was out, no, when the foods you love don't like you, don't eat those foods anymore. Don't mask it with a proton pump inhibitor or some other product that's going to allow you to continue to live broken. Pay attention to the alarm system. Well, now we are making connections between the onset of Alzheimer's disease and gut problems. And this fits nicely in the discussion because Dr. Dale Bredesen came on my show twice, and he wrote the book, New York Times bestseller, An End to Alzheimer's. And what he did with first 20 patients and then 200 patients in a multi-center project was change these people's lifestyles, but more importantly, change the foods that they eat. And his diet protocol resembled an autoimmune diet protocol, removing lots of the foods that we know seem to be misidentified as thyroid, chondrocytes, and then the body starts to attack those things in your body. So when we talk about these diseases, and I'm sure many more, we have to look at the not only the gut as an early indicator of these diseases are going to be in your future, but also the role they play in keeping you from being able to get better, not just cover up the symptoms. And today we're going to be talking with Dr. Grace Liu. She's known as the gut goddess for a reason, and she has a lot of insights and information and practical application. She works with people and she gets results. We're going to talk about that. So feel free to ask questions when we get started. I have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods, makers of the sweet roll. If you miss a Cinnabon, there's a solution. Legendary invented the sweet rolls. They come in cinnamon, chocolate, and wild berry. They have 20 grams of high-quality dairy protein, 1 gram of sugar, and 5 grams of net carbs, so you can eat them and stay in your lane. You'll feel guilty, but you shouldn't because they're not bad for you. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to get your sweet rolls and buy enough for your kids because they will eat them. And that's a better alternative than the obviously the crappy stuff that your kids want to eat. So check them out and show them some love. Now, without further delay, welcome back to the show, Dr. Grace Liu. The gut, should I call you gut goddess? No.
Or poop princess, either. It all works.
How are you?
I am so good today. Thank you.
Good.
It's such an honor to be here again. I love chatting with you and your audience.
So let's talk about this. When did the earliest studies start to show the link between the gut and especially certain forms like Lewy body dementia, which is a form of Alzheimer's disease?
Oh, I mean, as soon as we started categorizing species in the gut, first generation, second generation genomic testing, metagenomic testing, that literally links to the gut to any chronic disease on Earth, started to be found. And so literally there are all kinds, I teach this in my mastermind and to coaches and clinicians, concierge doctors. We have signatures that go with nearly every disease that exists of what is missing. It's like a wealth portfolio. You can have a poor person, you can have a wealthy person, you can have moderate in between people, right? And we know what their financial portfolios might look like. Maybe a poor person might have a lot of bankruptcy, debt, not very many assets, no real estate, no capital, right? And then you look at a wealthy person. I'm not saying just Jeff Bezos or, Elon Musk, but let's say, they have, corporate company success and, diverse dividends and capital and investments, right? As well as cash and bonds, Bitcoin, blah, 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 right? Same with the gut. When we see different conditions, we know there's a signature. What's bankrupt? So in some of the studies, we'll talk about today, Alzheimer's and mental diseases, even Alzheimer's, and I'll talk a little bit about ADHD, Asperger's, and neuroatypical, but there's bankruptcies of bifido. I created my probiotic, Microbiome Mojo and bifido to fill in these gaps. People are missing a lot of these acetate, vinegar making probiotics, and we're missing Akkermansia, we're missing butyrate making probiotics. And these bankruptcies, we can identify them now, or I can look at a person, I can kind of detect these already, and we can rebuild it to a wealth portfolio, a healthy wealth portfolio, full of diversity, full of dividend producing, stocks and bonds, full of assets that build over time, even double, in a short period of time, just like bacteria, our lovely bacteria.
But it's a lot easier to identify a bad investment than it is to identify a bad gut microbe, right?
Oh, no. I mean, the testing is pretty suboptimal at this time. I mean, we're in the dark ages of testing, in my opinion. Tests give us very limited focus and picture, but we know how to heal. Like there's a lot of studies about and evidence-based studies that I teach about what works to manipulate the microbiome. Literally, if you go into PubMed, put in manipulate microbiome. I love that category. There's really fascinating studies, translational medicine studies.
But don't we know that the microbiome will change in 24 hours depending on your diet? If you change your diet drastically, literally the footprint of the microbiome changes, doesn't it?
Oh, with one meal, it changes. With
Right.
one course of antibiotics, one dose of antibiotics, with one thought. Because thoughts, if they're stressful, right? Many of our pathogenic flora, like E. coli and other gram negatives, they live off adrenaline and cortisol. They're usually quiescent and benign, but the second they sense adrenaline literally binds into their pathogenicity islands of DNA. And that adrenaline, if it spikes, they'll be like, oh, frat boy party time.
Now, isn't coffee...
to like close the party down. They're living there in quiescent states because we need them. They also have a benefit to the gut. However, when they're, lit up like that because they sense a, opportunity, they're pathogenic, but they're opportunistic. So they don't want to be alive all the time necessarily. They just look for opportunities. And it takes the good flora, to kind of rein that all,
Well, so we are caffeination. Like we are a nation of people who thrive. Well, they don't necessarily thrive, but they're kind of I don't want to use the word addicted, but let's say habit forming, the nature of caffeine. And caffeine is basically liquid stress. When you think about how it increases adrenaline, norepinephrine, it increases cortisol with just a drink of it. And so what role is the penchant to caffeine constantly doing to our gut?
Well, there's, we started this conversation, I think, before. Some studies show it's really beneficial. It's associated with liver cancer benefits, even, protection. And then there's other studies, maybe it depends on the genetic SNP someone has and where it might cause blood restriction to the cerebral vascular system. So, literally, it'll increase flow and speed and velocity of blood to the brain, but it constricts actually the volume of blood, maybe, and closes out, cerebral blood flow. Not a good thing over time, but people feel great. I mean, it probably depends on also caffeine variants. So not everyone digests caffeine well. Others, they'll be lit up for a week. Others, like, they can take it at night and sleep perfectly fine because they metabolize it in half a millisecond.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so we've evolved over time, and caffeine, I don't have a yes or no. I mean, I used to really love it, but also I was an adrenal failure. I could have IV'd it, tap it in, because I didn't make any adrenaline yet anymore. It tanked because I had a lot of hormone toxicity from birth control, and then I was trying to do keto excessively, and I was training endurance training, triathlons and half marathons, and I freaking tanked my adrenaline.
Right. Just since you use the word keto, there's a study going around about keto, but I want to mention that the group that was studied was just for 24 hours, and 30% of their calories were coming from carbohydrates. That's not a keto diet. They said the keto diet is associated with potential heart disease, but they didn't. These people were not in ketosis, and if they're eating 30% of their calories from carbs, then so please take that study with a grain of salt. It's all clickbait. There's a large population. It's clickbait. There's a large population of keto people out there. Let's write a contrary article about keto because we'll get eyes on it. That's all it is. But the study was not a good study. It was actually a bad study. Okay, so let's talk about what happens in the Alzheimer brain gut. Does it become populated or overpopulated with the bad bacteria? Does it become underpopulated with the good bacteria? Or is it both?
So Alzheimer really falls in line with a lot of the theories. It's considered diabetes type 3, a metabolic disorder. And when we look at diabetic studies and microbiome, we see there is a bankruptcy of butyrate making a group of flora. In their Ruminococcus is one, okay? I call these the ABCs. There's also a loss of Akkermansia and the huge loss of bifidobacteria, the ABCs. So A is for Akkermansia, B is for bifido, and then C is for these Clostridiales, which are making butyrate. And being in that category, it's a metabolic disorder. When we look at the whole body, let's say there's 88 systems in the body, often we'll get leaky gut, and the body tries to defend against that. We have leakiness from a variety of reasons. Losing our good bifidos is one, all right? Stress, antibiotics, any organ system like our adrenals, when they start to tank and they don't make anabolic hormones. I'm a big fan of anabolic hormones because anabolic hormones are shown to seal and heal the gut like that. I mean, not that everyone should be on TRT or progesterone therapy for women, but there's a sense that as we age, when we lose human growth hormone and other anabolics like testosterone for men or women or progesterone for men or women, we're starting to get leaky. We don't have the capital to rebuild easily. Okay, we're losing all these contractors, right? And then so when leakiness grows, there's things that happen in the body. The body tries to back up against that. There's fibrosis, fattening of the organs that get fibrosed. So we get fatty thymus. That's why I love peptides like TA1 and T4. As we age, we calcify and fibrose and fatty up our thymus. Well, guess what happens to the brain? Yeah, so we get leaky gut, we get leaky brain, fat brain, fibrous brain. And literally if you look at the cadavers of Alzheimer's, in the brain dissection, and they are full of Candida and mold.
Mm.
Yeah, and we look at diabetic guts. I've seen many of them, and there's also studies. We look at ITS or 18S studies. They have a lot of Candida and other fungal elements, and if we dig, there's probably mold as well too.
Is the presence of fungal on the outside of your body evidence of fungus inside your body? Like people who have fungus, they get reoccurring athlete's foot. They have fungus in their toenails. Is that like,
Yeah.
oh, you better do something about it?
It's a terrain, and they're all connected through the lymph. We have lymph that goes to our skin. That's why our immune system, our B cells, are literally in the first few layers of our skin. And for men, I say, tongue to testicles. We look at the whole terrain, each square inch. And for women, tongue to tail, tongue to vagina, everything that's open to the outside, including our gut, it's considered exterior, just closed by a few sphincters, right? It's open to the world. And it's just like our scalp or underpit, arms, testicles, prostate, they're kind of connected there. And breast milk,
a lot of people have prostatitis, don't realize that it's a fungal infection.
It's a fungal infection. Well, when it's fungal, it's also bacterial, and often it's viral too. And a lot of cancers, melanoma, breast cancer, even prostate and testicular cancers, these are related to viruses, a host of them. HPV, CMV, Epstein-Barr is huge. And it's also huge. We call it molecular mimicry. It looks like flora, right? And it'll start attacking thyroid. So a lot of Hashimoto's Graves disease, these autoimmune diseases, they're highly linked to molecular mimicry of any flora that ends up within and on our terrain. We can see links with Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, yeast, Candida.
What about Lyme disease? Is there a gut link with Lyme disease?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So
all the co-infections can get lit up. They all live in us, but they're not necessarily bad. It's only when stress becomes high, we lose our immune energy, our immune system gets exhausted. Then these come out of hiding, whether it's biofilms or maybe they're quiescent, but then they will chronically activate.
Well, and I've talked about this recently on a friend of mine's post on Instagram. People hear biofilms, so there's this big movement to eradicate biofilms, but biofilms are like virus vaults. Like biofilms serve a purpose. In fact, the biofilms that form in a mother's breast milk when the mother has HIV are there to sequester the virus so the baby doesn't get exposed to them and the baby doesn't get HIV. So, we have to avoid baby talk. Good, bad, this is good, this is bad. Biofilms can be bad, but they also can be very beneficial as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think colonoscopy studies where, they were wiping out everyone's colon in order to view it, right, in a visualization in colonoscopy. Some people do fine with the wipeout procedure, whether it's with magnesium or sodium phosphate or something. Others, like they never resume their good flora again. The vault is gone forever. It's just like an antibiotic effect. I've heard also stories people can clear their C. diff that way. They're kind of rebooting. Yeah. So that's why I love talking about rebooting. Like sometimes it does work, but we try to do it gently. We don't want, because it will backfire for some people. Once they
I know we talked about this last time, but I just want to throw this in there. Is it true that those of us who still have an appendix, we actually have an original blueprint of our microbiome in there?
Yeah, whether it's like super beneficial, genetic.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I'm convinced there are certain traits in my family that appear to be neuromuscular in nature. Like my sister, I have symptoms similar to my sister's, with muscles not wanting to work like they're supposed to. And I'm convinced that we were exposed to certain microbes when we were babies. I was a C-section baby. My sister wasn't. But the environment we were raised in, I feel like it's when we get older that it shows up because the beneficial bacteria gets wiped out and the bad guys start to become the kings of the gut and they take over. You think there's any truth to that?
Oh, absolutely. When I screen our clients as they come in for the intake, 90% of our clients are C-section formula or Pitocin babies. Pitocin also, they'll give IV antibiotics just like C-section.
Right.
So there's a devastation of the rainforest in the gut right from the get-go. It's really hard to recover that unless you do, there's a purpose why babies fall through the mom's vaginal canal, the birth canal. It's the canal of life is what I call it, because they get their whole wealth portfolio at birth. Mom's vaginal fluids and her poop even, right? Talk about fecal microbiota transplants that are so healing, but they're literally getting, enough poop to like coat their face, their ears, nose, throat, all the way down. And when we have the protective flora, they're antiviral. We have this epic amount of throat cancer and tongue cancer, mouth cancer in men and women, and they relate it to HPV. You can do the VACCINE, but it's not going to help, because it's a natural part of our terrain. We don't want to vaccinate ourselves and have immune issues against our own natural good versions of HPV. But you're supposed to get this from mom. And you're supposed to get a lot
and if you breastfeed, your baby gets from the areola additional microbiome. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, when we talk about this kind of stuff, that you're supposed to get it from your mom, there are women and husbands intuitively that they say we have to deliver this baby through C-section. Like in my case, my mother was 5 feet tall, and I was like, I forget if I was 12 pounds, but anyway.
Wow.
So there was no way. They said, no, we got to take this baby C-section. Well, now people are wiping the vagina and wiping the baby with it upon the baby being delivered, so that they're introducing some of that microbiome that the baby would have acquired itself by passing through the vaginal canal. But what do you think about it? You think that really works?
I mean, for them there must have been a complication. And what we know about preeclampsia, and
right.
I mean,
diabetes,
considered. Yeah. I mean, preeclampsia and, baby and the symphony of hormones not allowing the baby to go through the natural vaginal canal. That means mom probably had a messed up biome. I wouldn't be swiping the baby necessarily. I'd consider maybe a curated symphony of probiotics. We can do that now. And that's what I advocate. And that's what we do with our clients. And we have the tools now to do that. It's not hard. And it's probably better to curate it a little bit.
So you have a term that you use.
Studies for the vaginal swipe didn't affect the babies at all. They had no significant p-values. Didn't do shit. Either the dose wasn't high enough, or they didn't have the right species in mom's swipes. There's a lot of reasons why it didn't work. Yeah, you have to look at responders and non-responders when we look at microbiome studies, because people's guts are so vastly different.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. I apologize. But I want to get to this, because I've never heard this term used before except by you, and that's fetus and foe instead of friend and foe. So does the woman have special tendencies to develop autoimmune disorders or be more sensitive to them because she has to differentiate between the fetus and a legitimate immune system foe?
Exactly. For autoimmune disease and the molecular mimicry that plays into that, women are 3 to 5x more likely to develop any autoimmune disease. Certain autoimmune diseases are more inherently women, but men are, epically starting to develop those that used to be considered, women only, like lupus. Yeah. And I was sharing the theory with you because somewhere along the line, right, mammals developed like hundreds of millions of years ago. We diverged from other animals, teleos, fish, and other animals, and platypus, and we diverged, and we weren't like marsupials and other egg-laying lizards and birds. We developed a faster basal metabolic rate, and we started to carry the baby internally after internal conception. And our immune system became laser sharp at that point, because it had to learn between self and fetus or foe, a parasite or other invader, right? And not attack the fetus, to reject a fetus after all that energy input, right? And conception, like, holy fuck, our species would die, like if that was happening. But now that's happening. We see autoimmunity in all the infertility clinics. Moms are having literally autoimmune attack to their partner's sperm. They literally check anti-sperm antibodies. Really, what they should be checking is anti-Candida, anti-E. coli, anti-Klebsiella, anti-strep, anti-Epstein-Barr antibodies. This is a better approach, than considering all the drugs, IVF clinics will do instead. that's autoimmune at that point for infertility. But yeah, so we have these immune systems and it helps us. But now we're in an age where our immune systems are very disrupted because we lack vitamin D, sunlight. Everyone's on melanocortin 1 or 2, melanotan 1 or 2. We're not getting any natural inputs. Bacteria are natural inputs. Like one of my probiotics, I have soil bacteria in it, spore-based soil, because we don't get dirt anymore. Dirt was our first probiotic.
There was a phenomenon with past, like back to Australopithecus, of what do they call it? The people, we ate dirt for a reason.
Yeah.
In fact, pregnant women were known to crave dirt.
Yeah.
Right. Geophagy. There was the phenomenon. Like we don't do that anymore, but we ate dirt for a reason. There were good microbes in dirt. There's been microbes that have shown that benefit people who like to garden, that actually reduce depression. And there are microbes in the dirt. But now we have glyphosate that's destroying all the microbes.
Yeah. Thank you, glyphosate.
Yeah.
Yes. And if we look at Amish studies, the healthiest Amish compared to some of their German, immigrant counterparts, they're super healthy. Often they're cancer-free, chronic disease-free, Parkinson's-free, neurodegenerative-free. Autism rates are so low. Well, they live literally next to their horse barns, and they're getting all those amazing flora from herbivore stool, poop, right? The dirt and natural, they rarely use electricity or pesticides. So it's like super natural. So it's a lot like our centenarians if we start to look at centenarian studies.
I want to put this up and we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to talk about testing. So you're an advocate. Most people hear something, they go out and they buy it. Oh, I'm going to take that. It's got to help me. And you don't want people to do that. You want people to only use stuff that they need. So let's talk about testing in the next segment. But before we do that, you can go to the Gut Institute website by going to shrnetwork.biz/gutreset, GUTRESET. And if you use the code SHR10, you'll save 10% off site wide. There's some really great products there. I use the Bifido Maximus myself, and we're going to talk about my experience with it when we come back. But check it out, and who knows, you may find out when we come back from this break that you need to do some testing if you have some of these symptoms. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Dr. Grace Liu. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that connects customers with partnered providers from the comfort of your home. Merrick provides concierge service with your very own patient care provider as your health advocate. You'll go over all your needs and goals, from improving sexual function, hair loss prevention, increased muscle, fat loss, and overall improved performance. Prescribed treatment options can be ordered and shipped directly to you if you meet the requirements. All from the comfort of your home. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Merrick Health. That's MAREKHEALTH and order your comprehensives and get 10% off with code SHR. Don't forget to add the lab analysis to have results reviewed with potential over-the-counter supplements or treatment recommendations. That's shrnetwork.biz/Merrick Health and use code SHR at checkout. Or order your own desired labs with code SHR and get 10% off your first lab order. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low-carb.
Hey, guys! It's time to change your f***ing underwear, and it's time to change to Sheath. Sheath's underwear's revolutionary designs allows your man parts to hang the way they would naturally hang if you were not wearing underwear. And this improves the blood flow throughout the day to the twigs and berries. If you've never experienced wearing a pair of Sheath underwear, boy, is there an exciting experience waiting for you. Grab a pen and write this down. Go to shrnetwork.biz/sheath. That's SHEATH. And use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 20% off your first pair. And get this, if you're not completely satisfied, send them back for a full refund. That's shrnetwork.biz/sheath.
For 17 years, I've heard promises of devices and gadgets that could eliminate chronic pain. I live with chronic pain. I live with sciatic nerve pain. It varies from just annoying to debilitating. I love to ride my motorcycle. I ride it every day if I can. And obviously, my motorcycle doesn't treat my lumbar spine good. I got the Kylo patch and I promised to give it a try, but I got to be honest with you, I thought it was bullshit. But I did what I was instructed. Find the right spot over the pain. You'll feel the pain start to go away. Leave it there and go about your business. And I did that. And that day I got on my motorcycle and I rode for about 3 hours. It was a Saturday. I came home that day, got off my bike and had no back pain. That's rare. In fact, it's impossible. How could that be? Well, the technology is legit. And I can tell you right now, if you give Kylo a try, you'll find that you don't have to live with chronic pain. Check it out. Go to shrnetwork.biz/GoKylo. That's GOKAILO. Use code SHR30 for 30% off.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. So, what tests do we need in order to really determine what's going on with our gut? It's not just microbes, there's fungus, there's viruses. What do we really need to do to zero in on this?
So we have about 88 different systems in our body. And so depending on what someone's health goals are, what they want to build or optimize, maximize, whether it's brain, cognition or immune system or neuromuscular, for athletes. I work with some MMA fighters and elite athletes to, help their physical health, or just moms trying to manage, all that they're doing. It depends on what they want, and then we look at it. So if it's more brain, cognition, or neuromuscular, which involves, the nervous system, we will look at a neurozoomer by Vibrant Labs, because it looks at antibodies. It's a dashboard to the whole immune system. And what's the immune system? Well, 80-90% of it is our small intestine, our gut, and the flora there. So it's a test to see what's being triggered, and what's not triggered enough. And it looks at, how the body's attacking. Are these legit? Nah, not really. We don't know. Sometimes there's a lot of antibodies, autoantibodies, but we don't know if it's actually causing theoretical molecular mimicry, friendly fire attack, or real, but it gives us a picture of how the immune system, the SWAT teams are working. Okay. Then I like to look at the most common, molecular mimicry. It's against Candida and Saccharomyces yeast. And why? Because these are the number 1 and 2, depending, their rank, just jumps up and down, depends. But they're the number 1 and 2 fungi in the gut. And because we've had overwhelming overutilization of antibiotics and stress and different things, pollution, aryl hydrocarbon, oil, petroleum pollution, as well as light pollution, blue light pollution, all kinds of pollution, right? Scent, we're inundated, even at the fucking gym, I get this like inundation of a room deodorant. I'm like,
yeah, I know.
So, yeah, all our systems are.
And then you have phthalates. Then you have phthalates to contend with. But that's
phthalates, yeah. Even have filtered water, it's filtered into plastic. Right? It's ridiculous, right? Yeah. So, we look at, so all of these are antimicrobial. Heavy metals. We used to clean with mercury in the hospitals 100 years ago. It was an antimicrobial. Why do we put it into injections for multi-dose vials? Thimerosal is mercury. Well, it's antimicrobial. So these start to kill our good bacteria, protective flora, and then that leads the fungi to overwhelm. They're not very antifungal, things I just listed. They're more, and they create an estrogen dominant state. Heavy metals, mercury, as you know, plastics, they create this estrogen dominance effect. And then that erodes even further for both men and women, both genders, our immune system function and even our gut. There's and we don't eat enough fermented foods. Studies show when we eat fermented foods, even if there are xenoestrogens in the food, they're degraded away. They're gone. They're transformed. And that's what our gut would normally do. Our flora would normally do that. So anyway, so I look at the antibodies to Candida and yeast. We never promote S. boulardii or Saccharomyces probiotics. These are not probiotics. They don't help anybody. Saccharomyces boulardii came from lychee, the skin of a lychee plant in tropical forests. Lychee, the fruit. It's not endogenous to human bodies.
Like the lychee nut you're talking about, right? Lychee nut? Yeah, I used
to
love those as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, so they survive they're antifungal, anti-mold because they survive in the jungle. But because people already, when we check them, they're launching, because these things, anything in the gut will leak into the bloodstream when they're ill and they've lost their protective friends. And when we lose enough of them, then there's a lot of streaming of these like undigested foods, even peptides. As you know, many in the peptide community, they're anaphylactic to ipamorelin, tesamorelin, and sermorelin. What the fuck?
Yeah.
How can we make these, they're bioidentical, we make these.
Yeah, but they're made by our bodies. I know a guy who became allergic. So there's something in peptides called aggregate. Aggregate is so let's say you have a 43 amino acid peptide. When they make it, 99% is right. The rest of it becomes fragmented. The front half of the peptide is right, 17 amino acids. The other ones are loose amino acids. They call that aggregate. The more aggregate you have in your peptides, and this includes insulin and growth hormone, the more likely you are to develop an immune response to your own growth hormone, your own insulin, your own form of peptide. So the right sources makes a difference.
Yeah. You can't get contaminated. Like 5-10 years ago, it seemed like everything was contaminated. But now we have really good, pure sources. Yeah, but still it's a problem for a lot of people because they're living in mold. They're having unrelenting Candida, Saccharomyces, overgrowth in the gut. They're not being addressed. The immune system's attacking anything that flows into the bloodstream. And that's going to be yeast, Saccharomyces, and Candida, without a doubt. But then you also get strep. All the mental people we work with, like anxiety, depression, PTSD, a lot of this is actually strep antibodies. So we pull a Neurozoomer or just do a blood test, or I see it so much, strep is a gram positive. So that's why it's so powerful. Like people instantly, when they take the gut reset, a high enough dose, 7 or 8, 10 capsules of these daily, we are able to offset other gram negative. These are gram negative. They offset other these are gram positive. They offset strep and other gram positives.
Right.
And strep is a big problem. It's in our ear, nose, and throat, and if we're not getting the protective flora from mom at birth, or we lose it after antibiotics, we have terrible pathogenic, like weeds, strep here. And they're very hard to get rid of. So we do a tongue to tail, tongue to testicle type of approach. We even have, nasal sprays. And, when people take we have a powder version of this. We have them take even a tablespoon a day. You should check that out, actually, Carl. They're reclaiming the terrain because they're snorting a little bit. I don't encourage people to snort it, but you could. For mold people, we'll have them get rid of MRSA and mold by dabbing a bit in the nose. But it'll help to change the terrain, ear, nose, throat. We're going to get rid of bad HPV, any Epstein-Barr in the thyroid or other endocrine glands here and lymph. We're going to start moving it out. We also do other protocols to kind of move it out, and the biofilms will shift. Because these, at a high enough dose, they're going to claim the terrain, and the biofilms will slowly start to shift. Yeah. So I'm glad
H. pylori used to be a big, you got to get rid of H. pylori, until I read a study that showed that children with no or low amounts of H. pylori were more prone to asthma, and children with moderate levels of H. pylori didn't get asthma. So once again, we come back to baby talk. Everything is good. Everything is bad. Talk a little bit about H. pylori, since we used to always focus on H. pylori, like just up to 5 years ago.
I know. Marshall, he got the Nobel Prize for that. What a dork who didn't look at the terrain. He mega dosed himself, and of course he got it, and the antibiotics does shift it out. But then he probably ended up with high yeast. H. pylori is very hard to eradicate with double antibiotics. The reason is because it lives inside yeast, and literally the modern, Western world therapies we have, I'm a pharmacist by trade, was triple therapy. Give a H2 blocker or acid blocker and 2 antibiotics. Fuck, you're growing yeast like crazy. Studies show H. pylori lives safely within Candida. You will never eradicate it. we all see it come roaring back again.
It literally infiltrates because mold has a nucleus, right? What do they call them? I used to know the name, but it's just jumped out. Well, but so microbes are dumb. They don't have a nucleus, but molds do, and molds actually will use. They'll gather some of these microbes because they make food for them. So they're like sheep herder. And so are you saying that that it literally infiltrates the spore of the mold, or it just lives around?
I haven't looked at that actually, but it's possible, because Aspergillus and other mold species, once they get in the body, they can grow, and they're similar to Candida in some aspects, and they're very hard to get rid of because their cells are like ours. We have 2 kingdoms of life, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. We're all 18. We're all plants and animals, and mold and fungi and mycorrhizal networks under the plants and trees. We're all eukaryotic. It's difficult. It's very difficult. That's why the drugs we use that are antifungals, like amphotericin, and we joked in pharmacy school, it's amphoterrible. It literally will kill people before the fungi might kill them. Yeah, it's very, very damaging. So Candida is 10 to 100x bigger than bacteria. So it's like a spaceship. A lot of bacteria, including Lyme, they love to hide there. It's very hard to eradicate these buggers. They're smart. They're evading. Their intelligence is higher than ours.
Do antifungals work if someone is infestated and they also have a high sugar diet, which means that the fungus is happy, it's living in paradise? Are there ways to remove them? I remember there was lots of oral drugs that you could take, but they're very tough on the liver. If you are identified by one of these testing processes to be really have a high mold content, is it possible to get rid of it?
So there are a lot of different protocols out there. Neil Nathan, Schumacher, Jill Krista, they're all fabulous. You have to look at the client. It's very important to look at the client. There's a lot of things going on. We look at the 88 systems. I have an atlas of people's bodies. How's their adrenals? How's their detox pathways? What's going on with all the various organ systems? Where do they have weaknesses? Where do they have genetic variants that might affect, some of the things we're trying to do? And it's not so easy. Every case is not the same. You can't do the same protocol for everybody, And one thing in functional medicine, integrative medicine, is toxins trump pathogens. Yeah, toxins really need to be addressed, and otherwise, the rest of the microbes, they'll always be crazy. They're happy because toxins make our systems very unhappy. It stresses our adrenals. And adrenals are really our foundation of health. We have to oxygenate. We have to have the mitochondria not be stiff and stagnant. So a lot of the things we do for mold and SIRS and mast cell issues, right, complex histamine issues with mold, it involves, now we have fabulous ways because we have peptides. So we use a little TA1. These are also long haul protocols. We use a little, mitochondrial peptides, SS31 or MOTC if they tolerate, or humanin. I just love humanin. And we get, some shifts because mitochondria help us do everything. And so when they're broken, we can't do nothing. Our mitochondria they catalyze, cholesterol going into all the steroid hormones. We need that anabolic drive. And so the mitochondria in our gonads or our adrenals, they're the ones pumping testosterone, pumping, progesterone for people. And if they're broken, we have to bring them back online as fast as possible. So, little peptides there really help. And that's our part of my foundation for mold remediation. The second thing is I do like binders. Some of the mycotoxin experts say, oh, binders don't work. I'm like, give me a fucking break. Our probiotic, when people are able to tolerate it, now half of SIRS won't and half of inflammatory bowel disease won't, because people have good flora and they're leaking into the gut. They're making antibodies to their own good flora. We have to calm the immune system down using, adrenal protocols, ozone, hyperbaric oxygen, infrared sauna, PEMF mats, blah, 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 to get to the right place, then we can start using these. But the cell wall, I've done keynotes on this. The cell wall of these really good flora, because they come from mom and they're supposed to line our whole mucosal lining in the gut, the whole, size of a tennis court. Their cell wall acts as an ionic resin. If we have enough of these, mold usually isn't going to be a huge ass problem. But we don't. We miss it. We're all, and then plus mold, once it gets in, it's antimicrobial. They only want to keep the grain for themselves. They're very greedy.
Fun. Yeah, I know. They're so greedy. Yeah.
Yeah. But we create this hostile environment for mold. There's no flow of air. We have EMF everywhere. So the little buggers, they're just angry. They're just angry little fuckers. They can't help it.
Babesia and Bartonella seem to be the big culprits in reinfection when people have Lyme disease.
Well, so that's why I say toxins trump pathogens. When you have mold present, 80% of Lyme is just mold. If you get rid of the mold and other potential toxins like mercury, arsenic, lead, and XYZ other, chemicals in the body, we'll see actually Lyme just naturally go away. But we do Lyme therapy with everybody. Everyone has chronically activated Epstein-Barr and Lyme. If not Lyme, then it's Babesia and Bartonella. But usually it's, it's Borrelia if we detect it. But again, when we do the detection, it depends on someone's immune system. You have to use a company that calibrates to the total IgGs. So again, when the immune system's exhausted, the adrenals are super exhausted, people don't light up, but you can tell they're infected, and there's a burden. Yeah. So you have to always take all these testings with a grain of salt and put it in the context of what's going on. Sadly, the testing is very limited. And only a few labs like Vibrant and Cyrix, they calibrate for total immunoglobulins.
Does Dr. Lou treat ulcerative colitis?
Absolutely, yeah. Half of our clients usually have a form of inflammatory bowel disease. It's very not hard but there is some root issues that affect a lot of people. I have a lot of genetics actually for UC, so we try to bypass the SNPs and variants mutations that affect people. But a lot of ulcerative colitis, the studies show we have an epic high amount of it now, even in children, because antibiotic use. And then there's a lot of emulsifiers in processed foods. And that instantly breaks our microvilli, the little where we have leaky gut.
Right.
They melt.
And ulcerative colitis is just another form of leaky gut, really, at the end of the day. Right?
And then because there's autoimmune attack to the very area we're trying to heal, the small intestines and colon. It's hard because you got triple toxicity. The immune system's literally attacking the fungi and viral and candida that are at the small intestine. And then they get, molecular mimicry. They're trying to attack literally the intestinal cells. It's difficult.
Kevin Ryan says, my girlfriend had to take a course of antibiotics recently. How long does it take after that to restore a good microbiome? Anything she should be doing? She is taking a probiotic supplement. And we're going to talk about probiotic supplements in a second because they're not all good. It just and some of the more popular ones that like doctors prescribe, like VSL number 3, they may not really work as good as they can. And we'll talk about that. What do you think about that? What can somebody do after a round? I guess it really depends on what antibiotics too, right? They don't all act the same.
Yeah. So I look at studies called AAD, antibiotic associated diarrhea. This is just one category of where, antibiotics cause a lot of problems. And literally almost every AAD study shows any probiotic, brand out there will minimize damage from antibiotics. Yeah. So there's a lot people can do. Just simply taking fiber, psyllium, oat fiber, any kind of, fruit polyphenols and berry polyphenols. They're all shown to help prevent antibiotic damage. But it really depends on the person. We also have studies that show with antibiotics, some will recover their original microbiome. Others, after even just one course, never get there again. Even when they track them 3, 5, 7 years out, they didn't come with a really great, they had a fragile biome when they started the antibiotic.
begin
So
with.
it really depends, you know.
Do you use LL37 at all in eradicating both molds, fungi, and bad pathogens?
There's not a lot of studies with it, so I've been hesitant when we don't have enough studies. I personally did try it out. Didn't see. I've had a history of like poor gut and having hormone damage, so it wasn't like for me like a miracle like it was for you. But what I do love is that our peptides, I love teaching about peptides. We offer continuing education for practitioners and any layperson as well too. These are sort of like master classes. They're kind of intense. Every peptide that exists, all right, they're usually neuropeptides as well. They help build up our brain. I love them. TA1, thymosin alpha-1, thymosin beta-4, BPC, C-Lank, C-Max, cerebral lysin, right? And even RO290. I don't know if you've considered that for any kind of pain for your friends or colleagues and stuff, but
you mean ARA? ARA?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. When I look at peptides, it's so fascinating. Every peptide, they're mostly all neuropeptides as well. They're helping our brain.
Mm-hmm.
They're also, when they have animal studies, they're also healing ulcerations in the gut.
Oh, interesting.
There's this parallel thing. And nearly every peptide, they are AMPs, like the peptides that our bacteria make, our good bacteria and good yeast will make. They're antimicrobial peptides.
Right.
Yeah, in animal studies, and then if we get a really good human study. And we know, like with TA1, thymosin alpha-1, we have like literally thousands of human studies because it's used in every country for hepatitis B and C. It's antiviral. And it can reverse liver fibrosis, scarring, and cancer, and hepatitis cancer.
Beta-4 is really good for that. Let's see what Sean Wasson says here. Is there a link to seed and vegetable oils as well? Do they contribute to
Absolutely. The from there and how rancid these oxidized fatty acids are terrible for our microvilli because they make the structures just break. There's only a single cell layer that separates the blood and the lumen of the gut. And these microvilli are like a double lipid layer, and that's it. It doesn't take much. I'm not the biggest fan of high fat diets for that reason. It can melt the microvilli. We have many studies about that. I'm not a fan of like hydrogenated coconut oil, where you get powdered creamers for your coffee and shit like that. Like terrible for the microbiome. Terrible.
Well, and even the powdered keto, the powdered C9 and C8, that's another one that's a problem, I think, too.
Yeah.
Keto powders. We're going to take our last commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk specifically about bifidobacteria. Bifidobacteria is the most abundant bacteria in mother.
Oh.
Am I not? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Can you repeat that part? It fell off for me.
Bifidobacteria is the most abundant bacteria in human breast milk. And it's so important that the mother's breast milk has food for the bifido. It has a certain ISO type fibers in the breast milk, not for the baby, but to keep the bifido alive until it can get into the baby and do what it has to do. Let's talk about the magic of bifidobacteria when we come back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back to Grace Lee. BPC is one of the most amazing supplements you can use. It's been shown to increase the speed of recovery, heal the gut, and do so many other things. BPC stands for Body Protection Compound, and it's a naturally occurring peptide in the body. Used by professional athletes and weekend warriors alike, there has always been an obstacle in the way of average people using BPC, and that is it was injectable only. Not any longer, thanks to Nutrineeds. We now have oral BPC, and it works. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Nutrineeds, NUTRANEEDS. Use the code SHR and save 10% off your bottle of BPC. Feel better, Recover faster, train harder. Nutrineeds. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. I am the inventor of GunLeash. Over 500,000 handguns are lost in the United States every year. If you carry a gun like I do, you are 300 times more likely to lose your gun. And 15% of those guns will end up in criminals' hands and used in the commission of a crime. GunLeash solves that problem. GunLeash is a patented, no-tracking proximity device the size of a postage stamp. It will alert you as soon as your gun is outside of your range, so you can never leave your gun behind. To learn more and to be notified when GunLeash is available at the end of January, go to gunleash.com and get on our mailing list. GunLeash. Never lose your gun, never leave your gun. There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off. Great sleep upgrades you on virtually every level: body fat, muscle mass, mood, brain function, and countless other ways. But taking melatonin alone isn't the answer. Thanks to a brand new sleep formula developed by my friends at Bioptimizers, you can experience the best night's sleep ever. Sleep Breakthrough is a delicious sleep drink that supports your natural melatonin production and relaxation without creating a dependency, so you can have the best night's sleep on demand. It targets 5 different sleep pathways to give you the best sleep ever. And best of all, you'll wake up feeling rested and rejuvenated so that you can have the best day possible. For an exclusive offer for my listeners, go to sleepbreakthrough.com/SHR and use the code SHR10 for 10% off. Plus, you can unlock special gifts with the value of at least $20. This is a limited time offer, so go to sleepbreakthrough.com/SHR right now.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Grace Liu. We're going to talk specifically about bifidobacteria. I had formulated a protein powder, and then I took it off the market because there was the margins were so slim, and people didn't want to pay for a good protein powder. They like commodity protein powder, but it was called Thrive, and it was built around human breast milk. And I had a lot of bifido in it because I knew that there was a lot of bifido in human breast milk. Talk about bifido, the magic of bifido. And actually, as we age, we tend to have less bifidobacteria in our body or in our gut, right?
So as you know, it's really expensive. I mean, some of the species we have in there cost more than cocaine per kilo. Yeah, right. Because they do a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And what you mentioned about breast milk and the human milk oligosaccharides, this is fiber, prebiotic, is super fuel, HMO is what we call it. And they're expensive fiber too, if you buy it, from companies. Breast milk is not sterile. The baby is born with no immune system. All it gets is like mom's immunoglobulins. That's her protective, I was talking about total IgGs. These are the protective antibodies, that mom will deliver to the baby. Well, the mom also delivers not just the bacteria that coat the baby's throat through the vaginal canal, but through the milk, lots of bifido and actually all the flora in the gut will travel up through the lymph into the breast milk. That's what studies show. And also, so for moms who are ill, like they have inflammation or they're, gestational diabetes, GDM, or, they had preeclampsia or some other issues, like the bad bacteria they have that made them fat and metabolic and inflamed, also will go into the milk, is what studies show. And so mom delivers like flora, from everywhere in the body through the lymph. And this is only determined literally like not very long ago, 10 years ago. And then the milk is rich with fiber. It tastes kind of sweet. Oligosaccharide. I used to make a protein kind of like you. I made something, but the margins sucked, so I just stopped it. But it was a protein bar, and we had ISO, as we were talking about sake. It's iso malto oligosaccharides are from fermented rice and in sake, and very healthy. And so all this package gets delivered to the baby because bifido is the immune system. It's the immune system for the baby to keep viruses out, sickness, and keep the the gut selectively tight. Now, babies are born with leaky gut. This is an evolutionary selection. Yeah, because mom's immunoglobulin, mom can't IV it into the baby. It has to go through the gut. So there has to be a little bit of
the gut has to be breachable. In fact, there's also free-form amino acids in breast milk that go right through the gut and into the bloodstream to satisfy the baby's hunger immediately.
Yes.
That's why they quiet down right away.
Yes,
so,
yes. And I bet you milk is probably full of peptides.
Oh,
now that I know about peptides, like I'm sure mom's just delivering, because baby, there's a fetal programming to peptides when we look at if we can track it in animals and maybe in humans. But TA1, thymosin alpha 1, the highest concentration is in the gut, and particularly the baby's mouth, because it's suckling all day. Otherwise, it would develop like calluses and bruises, right, and cuts. It's like fucking drinking all fucking day long, sleeping or suckling. And so TA1 heals their mouth.
Well, in fact, there's a study one study that shows that bigger brain does equal greater intelligence in babies. Thymosin beta 4 is the most abundant peptide in a fetus.
Yes.
And it actually turns on neonatal genes that build the heart, build the lungs, build the kidneys, build the spine. Like the blueprint of life is turned on by thymosin beta 4. And interestingly enough, rodents don't have trimesters like humans do, but the brain forms in the last rodent segment of birth, and it's called H something. And rodents that were given, pregnant rodents that were given 2 doses of thymosin beta 4 at 0.8 milligrams per kilogram. You have to do the math and come back to humans with this. The rodents had bigger, more well-formed brains, which means that thymosin beta 4 could help a lot of pregnant women if they could figure out how to stimulate it. And I'm not suggesting people go out and start injecting peptides during pregnancy because we haven't done the research. However, if somehow thymosin beta 4 is elevated, you have a healthy thymus gland, you're paying attention to things that support a healthy thymus gland, your baby will be smarter.
Absolutely. I'm certain of that as well.
Yeah. I mean, the studies show it conclusively. Bigger brains, better organs, thymosin beta 4, and larger brains have a greater capacity for intelligence. I mean, we can have a much smarter population, which brings me to my next question.
But it's never too late to rebuild, Carl.
I have a protocol. I take 5 milligrams of thymosin beta 4 every 7 days. And I also take 1 milligram in my stack post-workout. And I can tell you, I am noticing changes in my body. I consult. I try not to do too much of it. I don't have the time. But this wonderful couple in Utah reached out to me. And the guy just told me, he said, "You've changed my life." He used to go to all the peptide conventions. They were doing all this 12 different peptides, different times a day. I changed his diet just slightly. All of his arthritis pain has gone away now. And now he's doing thymosin beta 4, the protocol that I see. He's only 135 pounds. And so he only needed 3.75 milligrams of thymosin beta 4 every 7 days. I just spoke to him before the show. He says, I can't tell you, you've changed my life. And it's little things. Like I don't have them, GLP-1 agonists, you don't need that if you're watching your diet, if you're spending enough time not eating. I mean, there's just all these other, if you go to these peptide conventions, you'll swear that you got to drop $1,000 a month and you got to be shooting 16 peptides a day in order to prolong life. And Dr. Irina Comboy came on the show. They're the ones that are leading the research on plasmapheresis and plasma dilution and seeing real changes in people's epigenetic and chronological versus biological age by removing plasma and either letting the body replace it itself or replacing it with synthetic plasma. And she said on this show one of the most brilliant statements I've ever heard. There's nothing you can take that will reverse your aging. It's only the things that you remove that have the capacity to reverse your aging. And people can't, because people want to go out and just buy stuff and just take it. Like, oh, I'm going to take this. It's going to make me. No, you got to stop taking the stuff that's shortening your life, that's ruining your life. But it's hard for people to think that way.
That's very, very good. I mean, tech has gotten, the way we've treated the planet and polluted the air and water. I do believe it's what we take away for sure, right? But we can add things. Like we have a lot of literature, medical literature about bioregulators and peptides that literally mortalities increase 3 to 5x the longer someone uses them. It's not just telomere extension, but it's like, like I mentioned, BDNF, brain function, gut. Some of these bioregulators, they heal the gut. When we heal the brain, we always simultaneously, in parallel, heal the gut. That's how the circuitry works. That's why I love like these peptides. People can kind of screw around and eat gluten, dairy, and act like eat like assholes. Yeah,
right.
I tried it. I played around. I can not work out sometimes and still grow muscle. I mean, do I want to do that? No. I'm naturally going to stimulate stem cells instead of taking really expensive stem cells and exosomes by just doing HIIT and some extended. I have twitch, slow twitch. I like endurance running. I like trail running and longer running, but I'm built that way. Not everyone is. Some people have more power, and they don't need that extended. It may not be good for them actually.
Whole blood
I like paleo. I like carnivore. I'm a I have incisors. Like I'm a carnivore, but people who have flat teeth, like, they're more agriculturally adapted. I can still eat an 80% plant diet because I'm ApoE2. So we can jump into Alzheimer's now. I have no genes for Alzheimer's, like the ApoE4. These are more older genetics that get it. And they do better with more meat and not excessive fats, but their environment was very scarce. And so their body, ApoE4, what it does is there's no chaperones that clear out heavy metals. They literally chaperone all kinds of minerals from the environment because they evolved away from mineral-rich water, like oceans and native water sources that had high minerals. So they had to scavenge these minerals from the environment. Iodine's enriched in ApoE4 compared to normals who don't have ApoE4. If they're living in an area like in Tibet or something, they've done studies on ApoE4 versus non-ApoE4, and they have higher, they have an enrichment because of the ApoE4. And that's the goal of the ApoE4. And that's why there's more autism. Like 20 years ago, 50 years ago, there's more autism in only ApoE4, but now we see it across the board because everyone's inundated with heavy metals. That's the problem with scavenging. They'll also pick up heavy metals because they're so high induced in the water, air, food, soda drinks also are high, mercury because of the way chlorine, the way the carbonation and, we have a lot of heavy metal toxicity right now. Yeah. So ApoE4 gets affected by that. And they do better with more endurance exercise, cardio, low level. That's what studies show. And because it's a metabolic disorder, when we get heavy metals in the brain, everything starts to break down. When we damage our brain, instantly in parallel, the gut breaks, but we also can rebuild it. Anything that helps the brain will also rebuild the gut. And now we're going to go over some probiotic studies in both animals and humans. Like probiotics will help the mini mental score, in demented people in Alzheimer's. Probiotics work. They even increase NO. And the reason is because they literally line the whole small intestines, this tennis court size, interface. It's our hard drive, and it's protected. It's the malware protection. Like I have a couple, cybersecurity clients, Silicon Valley, they run cybersecurity for companies big and small. And literally what we're doing is there's always going to be constantly attack. Trojan horses, this is how our kind has evolved, through the billions of years on Earth. All plants and animals and creatures, get these invasions, right? And there was always protection, and you have to always, update your iOS. This is our basic, most ancestral first iOS and our current iOS. Like having Microbiome Mojo and Bifida Maximus line, it's a third of the component of the whole GI tract. The other is butyrate makers. So we sell a probiotic called Equilibrium. It's literally the only probiotic that has a butyrate maker in it. It's on our website, Equilibrium. And then Akkermansia now comes in a probiotic. It's called Pendulum. But most people have enough. It's just not in the right place. It's in the lumen, and you can detect it in stool, but it's not here sitting right on the mucosa, right at the tennis court level, surface of the tennis court level. How do we get things there? We got to weed, seed, and feed. It's like musical chairs, if it's full of mold, viruses, Candida and strep and Klebsiella, Citrobacter, E. coli, all these like not so great things, right? There's no room for our lovely bifido to sit there, whether mom's pumping it in through the milk or baby's eating, fiber-rich food and even probiotics. There's no room. Poor baby, poor all our generations. And we can open it up. Studies show, if we use botanicals. I'm not a fan of antibiotics because this is why we're in the problem we are. So we use very, very limited. But sometimes, it helps because there's such an overgrowth there. We just need to like elbow grease, and dig these little buggers out. And we do sometimes use antifungals, but we have to do them very safely. Studies are showing just like overuse of antibiotics, overutilization of antibiotics. If there's any daily prescription antifungal use, what is left is there's a selection of drug-resistant bugs, fungi, and there's also a selection of the itraconazole, fluconazole, terbinafine, all the prescription antifungals. What's left are not only resistant fungi, but the worst kind of mold, the worst, most tenacious aspergillus, the worst kind of, other species of mold. And they're very hard to get rid of because our drugs are very limited. And if people get to that point, they're going to be addicted to these antifungals, our prescription. And plus these prescriptions, when we do use them, we have to have monthly monitoring, or we, have them consider stopping because they're liver toxic. People literally, with these medications, they can go into liver failure and need a liver transplant. They're not the safest things on earth because again, the cells are like ours. Fungi cells are like ours. The drugs we use, they're terrible. They're terrible, terrible, terrible. Worse than antibiotics. So I would never consider daily use of any kind of prescription unless, I wouldn't actually. Yeah. So we do botanicals because they're very gentle. Mm-hmm. Generally, they're not liver or renal toxic, kidney toxic. And we do a gentle weed and seed. We're looking at every level of microbes, viral, fungi, mold and candida types, bacterial, and the co-infections, so intracellular bacteria. Those are buggers as well. And we look at toxins because toxins, again, trump all these little pathogens and parasites. I forgot parasites, worms and parasites. But the toxins are what keeps these around because they're riling up the immune system. They're exhausting the immune system. You know how like in the army, like, you let the soldiers sleep, right? But if you keep them up, they go crazy. They're not going to fight. And I know U.S. and other European, like during, World War I or II, they were, or Normandy invasion or whatever, they were giving them speed. Okay, yeah, it kind of works for a while. And then boom, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks out later, none of them are working and the war is lost. Right. Same with our autoimmunity, our adrenal glands, our gonads that pump out, anabolic hormones. Once they get exhausted, nothing's going to work, nothing's going to work. And our gut, again, it's the largest source of steroids. Hormones, they break down xenoestrogens and other toxins. They ferment them and break them down. We call that the estrobolome. They're literally, our gut is the largest source of hormones, melatonin, serotonin, many neurotransmitters, and they get stored there as well. Our gut is the largest source of peptides. When we have the right guts, we even have, circular antimicrobial peptides. These are powerful. We have short ones, long chain ones, and some are very targeted. Some are particularly targeted against Candida. Like my probiotic in vitro, the species we have, they're just generic species, but in any study, when we have these in a petri dish, if they have Candida, it just wipes it out. So we have ladies with BV, bacterial vaginosis, or Candida, vulvar vaginosis, yeast infections. We have them apply this vaginally. Just open up the capsule. Yeah, put a little in your mouth and from one capsule, half capsule, the other half, gently insert it vaginally. Boom, vaginal infection is gone. No other intervention often needed. And like you, a lot of people do the reset. They're on 7 or up to 10 capsules of these a day or a tablespoon of powder. We hear Clostridium difficile, gone. Some people have had it. Like I have a doctor friend and he was working with a client and he didn't do the reset with them yet. And the guy was like suffering with Clostridium difficile like for 18 fucking months. He did the reset, first negative stool test ever for that guy.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, we have same with H. pylori too. This will get rid of GERD, reflux, if they tolerate it. Now, again, the most sickest people, there may potentially be allergic to these, and we have no test, really good tests. You just have to try it out, go low and slow dose, but if they trigger something, histamines or trigger burping, bloating, yeah, you have to kind of get over that hump. But if it doesn't go away, they're probably allergic to it. We have to back off. Just do it. Even my long haul, 1/10 of my long haul can't tolerate it. We do really low doses and then gradually up it. Just like breast milk, like people should tolerate mom's breast milk, but we know now babies, they may be allergic to their own mom's.
My daughter Taylor
A1 casein.
atopic dermatitis from breast milk. My ex-wife breast milk. Yeah. So sadly, we had to put her on garbage milk. That was it. We did introduce raw milk early on in her life. Katrina, you can come right back here where you're watching it now and watch the rest of the show. It'll still be there. That's all.
Yes. Yeah.
There's another subject I want to hit with you real quick. We have like 15 minutes. We live in a world today where mental illness has been normalized because it's so prevalent. How much of that mental illness is coming from the gut?
Oh, I mean, studies show endlessly it's always 100% gut, but there's also toxins often involved too. So again, toxins now, also trump the microbiome.
Have you seen cases where you've worked with people who displayed certain types of neuroticisms or neuroses, and when they started paying attention to altering the gut microbiome, eliminating the bad players, increase that they like? I've heard about autism spectrum disorder changing just with the introduction of L. plantarum. So you see generally people who display these like anxiety, you said mental illness and neuroses, can they change their lives by getting?
Absolutely. I first formulated this because our species helped a lot of autistic friends and clients. Like instantly, even just a small dose, often the kids in 1 week would triple their vocabulary and become more neurotypical, like eye contact even within a week or two of using our probiotic. But for kids in the bad microbiome, they'd really get up to a high dose quickly, because they're so devoid. All studies show with autism that they're devoid, the many bankruptcies of all flora. And there's a lot of overgrowths, and particularly mold. So autism is highly, highly related to mold and mercury and other heavy metals. Yeah. And so I'm going to share a study, a researcher named PharmD, she's a neuropsych party. It's kind of funny. But in 2015, she took 73 kids that had a high risk of ADHD and Asperger's. 73 babies. They were born, and then half the group was given a probiotic, a Lactobacillus rhamnosus, very low dose. I don't remember, 5 billion or something, very tiny billion.
That's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Other group got nothing. They tracked these kids 3, 6, 9 weeks out, 18, 3, 6 months out, 9 months out, 18 months out. And then at 13 years, they looked at their gut studies. Now they stopped the probiotic after 6 months. So from birth to 6 months. Okay. And what they found was that the probiotic group had no incidence of neuropsych issues, no ADHD, no Asperger's. Then control had a 17% increase. That's the normal, rate. Yeah, 1 or 2 out of 10 kids will have a neuropsych issue. And when they broke down the statistical analysis of the gut, the only difference between the two groups was that there was a 10-fold enrichment of bifido, and particularly bifidobacterium. Yeah. When they drill down. So a lot of studies will show, you give a lactobacillus probiotic, but guess what grows? What's the statistical difference? Bifido. We get it from birth from mom, and bifidobacterium is the highest strength in the industry because we overstuff this compared to what's on the label. Right. Longum is associated with centenarians. It's enriched many-fold in all centenarians across Earth in the studies where we have microbiome studies.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we know, there's also MOTS-C and human studies, right? And they looked at centenarians. Whether it was Italian or other groups, they looked at various groups, and even the kids of centenarians, because often the centenarians passed away before the end of the study or something. They had 3x more MOTS-C, a mitochondrial peptide. They had 3x more humanin. So these are like different studies depending on what peptide they looked at. Well, mitochondria are bacteria. At one point in evolution before life, as we were became multicellular, our cells endocytosed a bacteria. It was Rickettsia, one of the smaller intracellular ones, and then, outsourced it for energy to break down food, fats, proteins, carbs, everything, and make steroids.
Interesting.
They make steroids from, the ribosomes. They take cholesterol and then manipulate it. So yeah, when we treat the mitochondria well, and we have good genetic SNPs for it, we treat our microbiome well. When we treat our microbiome well, then our mitochondria get happy. Athletes get better, happy, faster, stronger. Same with our brain too. Our brain has a lot of capacity for mitochondria. So there's a lot of parallel things. So bifido is the start of life, and we need it. We need it even when we're ill and we're rebuilding things. Even after like Clostridium difficile, like it's lethal, right? Over 40,000 people die from Clostridium difficile and overuse of antibiotics, and then this lethal bacteria overgrowth. You know, the spores are everywhere. Studies show all the hospital staff and doorknobs and doctors all have Clostridium spores on their hands, their fucking hands. Well, when they drilled down who got colonized, whether it was babies or adults, the amount of bifido was inversely proportional to the colonization. So the least amount of colonization with C. diff spores were the people with the highest amount of bifido in their gut.
Fascinating. Thomas Whittingham wants to know if you have any opinion on colostrum, and how do you know it's a good quality product?
Yeah, we try to go with casein-free colostrum. That's kind of hard. So we enjoy. I know there's beautiful studies about colostrum, but a lot of our clients are really hypersensitized to any casein, and colostrum has it. So it's hard to get a dairy-free, casein-free one. I tend to not want to trigger people. You know, they're already triggered by so many things. Yeah, I'd rather use butyrate. There's some really great peptides we do for gut healing now. And when you layer on 2, 3, 4 of them, oh, wow. Like you just get tremendous gut healing. You know, our gut is impermeable for a reason, right? We don't want the stuff in there, food, bacteria, yeast to go in the thing. So I found, because there's no study for this, you know, you can inject the wazoo out of peptides. You will not heal the gut. You have to take oral peptide.
Right.
And again, because they're antimicrobial, we now are able to weed less. We don't have to use so many botanical that are antiviral, antifungal, you know, blah, blah, blah. We can actually get away with using a lot less and just have people do the peptides. Larazotide, which is anti-zonulant peptide, a bunch of KPV. It's anti-mold, antiviral, antifungal, and it's just regenerative, like to the fetal programming you were talking about, Carl. Like it just gets people regenerates like at a stem cell level properly, like and scars go away, and you don't even need to do that one every day, but KPV is awesome. And then of course just BPC, but BPC recruits mast cells. You know, SIRS and mold, people don't always tolerate BPC, sadly, but they do seem to tolerate KPV a lot better, and TA1. So we'll even do, you know, low doses.
I use TA1 at night before bed, because nighttime is when the gut prunes like I like to say, it prunes the gut. You know, it's supposed to be healing and working on itself. And I figured, well, I'm going to influence it with the thymosin alpha 1 at night.
Did you spike your oxytocin with oxytocin exercise? I
haven't been using oxytocin lately. That's how I am. I cycle on and off of things intuitively. But what I am doing now is I'm taking both 1 milligram of oral BPC and a 0.5 milligram post-workout injected BPC. And I've seen changes in my gut between that and the bifido. Like my gut has gotten flatter, and I haven't changed anything else. Like the distension is almost gone. I can't do a vacuum pose yet, but in a couple months I'll be able to. So I interpret that as gut inflammation is going down. I've never had my visceral fat assessed, because the insurance company won't pay for that. They don't care if you get sick and die. But I'd like to have my visceral fat tested also now. But
we'll see your liver tests go down. We all see liver tests in functional ranges for men. 15 is ideal and below for AST, ALT. Yeah, bifido is fabulous for bloating. It's also really good for morning wood. What have you noticed?
So my stress levels are ridiculous right now. I'm not sleeping. I'm under so much stress with the startup, plus trying to maintain Superhuman Radio for at least another couple months. I hope I'm off the air before that. But quite frankly, I have so much stress right now that morning wood is not even on my radar. Although I am getting it again, but at my worst, when my stomach was bothering me and I had this stress, I wasn't waking up with erections at all. And I worry, like I knew right away, like that was like, oh shit, I'm on the wrong side of this hill right now. I got to get back to the other side of the hill, because I believe
how about a month into the gut reset? We often hear of huge hormone changes. This is often
Well, I
only
got to tell you the truth. I've been doing it wrong, Grace, and I was actually I'm going to email you. So I was
Okay.
just using Bifido. I wasn't using the other product. I'm so sorry
No,
now.
no, it's fine. It's a great place to start. Yeah. Did you get up to 7 caps a day?
I use 2 capsules a day with
Okay.
meals that have fiber, some amount of fiber in them. That's
Okay,
what I do.
great. And did you see some hormone shifts? Some like changes
I'm
in
on HRT, and I'm on what I consider a low dose. It's one of the lowest doses I've been on in over a decade. I mean, probably for 8 or 9 years, I was using 3 grams of injectable anabolic steroids a week.
Okay.
I'm doing between 300 and 400 milligrams a week now. I feel good. I'm still strong. But again,
So is there any relative change in morning wood after beginning the probiotics?
yes, they came back. It came back. I mean, it was crazy. Like, I got so worried. I thought, man, this launch of this company is killing me, literally.
I'm sorry. You'll get it back again.
But the stress, it's all
I'll
stress.
send you some powder, so then you could put it in your protein shake. And when you get to the higher dose,
I'm not using any protein powders right now. I'm eating only food. So I have a theory.
Okay.
This theory finds its genesis in when I did a show probably a decade ago about acellular carbohydrates. So your stomach, not your intestines, your stomach is like a food processor. Very little food should be absorbed in your stomach. Your stomach is only there between your teeth for mastication, saliva, and other gastric juices to break down food and then send it where it's supposed to be absorbed. And that's the small and large intestine. And so when we did the show about acellular carbohydrates, part of what we learned in that is that it fosters pathogenic microbes to grow where they shouldn't, because acellular carbohydrate is ready to be absorbed. I mean, it could be absorbed in the buccal of the mouth. And so it's going to feed opportunistic bacteria that are there that normally wouldn't be fed if it was meat or vegetables, which would get absorbed downstream further. I'm starting to think, so we did a show probably 2 years ago about the linkage between a couple amino acids and the onset and aggressive progress of multiple sclerosis. See, we always thought, I always thought it was, when you cut grains out, legumes out, MS seems to get better. It may not be the carbohydrate or the fiber. It may actually be easily absorbed amino acids that are being absorbed where they normally wouldn't, and that is in the stomach. And so I'm starting to suspect, and I happen to think that from some things that he has said on the show when he was on here, Sean Baker has been on my show quite a few times since 2014. I'm starting to think he thinks this too. I think that powders, not like probiotic powders, they're supposed to be absorbed in the gut and elsewhere to help displace those opportunistic microbes that shouldn't have been there in the first place. But I'm starting to think that powdered foods, acellular foods that don't need to be broken down in the stomach to be digested further downstream, I think they actually make opportunistic microbes stronger because they eat that food before it gets downstream. They get it. Oh, it's right here in the stomach. We're going to eat this now. And then downstream, it's not being absorbed because it's not there as much. So I'm starting to question powdered foods, especially hospitals are famous for medical grade foods, soy, simple sugars, maltodextrin, and it's all powdered. And you even though you mix it in water, that's basically like a suspension. When it gets into the stomach, it's able to be eaten by pathogens that you don't want to feed early.
Yeah.
Maltodextrin
is terrible. It's an emulsifier. It's highly associated with inflammatory bowel disease too. We're one of the few probiotic companies that don't use maltodextrin. It's a good flow agent. So many probiotics.
Anti-conglomerating.
Doctor formulate probiotics. It'll give you a whopping dose of maltodextrin in there. Yeah, we try to keep it as safe for the gut as possible. I agree. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
Let me put this up one more time. So those of you who want to learn more about not only what Dr. Lou does and products she offers, go to shrnetwork, shrnetwork.biz/gutreset, GUTRESET, and use the code SHR10 and get 10% discount site-wide. Check out all the different products she offers. And you have literature, right? They can they not buy books on your website?
Absolutely. Yes. We have our SIBO, 7 steps to SIBO health. We talk about SIFO in there, small intestinal fungal overgrowth, because they're concurrent. Yeah. Yeah. It's so delightful. So yeah, anyone who's worried about like Alzheimer's, dementia, or Lewy body Parkinson's or regular Parkinson's, yeah, check out the products. I mean, like the study, that's the meta-analysis. They had 4 human studies, and probiotics just blew the symptoms up, like reduced the mini-mental score, improve nitric oxide in one study. I mean, just improve cognition. I mean, that's rarely seen in drugs. You know, we usually use for Alzheimer's cholinase inhibitors and cholinergic drugs. So, and we know in the integrative field when we have ketones, because ketones hit the cholinergic receptors for calm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so why, coconut oil really helps is because they grow ketone bodies, ketones in the body, and we can literally heal a lot of Alzheimer's because they're hitting a nervous system receptor. And when we're fasting, between meals, when we have the butyrate making bacteria in the gut, like again, equilibrium is one species, but when we feed our good flora, because we all have butyrate makers in the gut, when we feed them plenty of prebiotics, Paleo Man, it's identified that maybe he had 100 to 150 grams of fiber daily. A lot of fiber, a lot of low glycemic index carbs. And when we feed it like that, we get butyrate. Well, butyrate will be used as an energy source, a ketone body, beta hydroxybutyrate. And we turn on the cholinergic nervous system. And on our last show, I went into depth about the oxytocin exercise, how we co-regulate each other, because we used to be tribal, migrating, we always co-regulated one another, whether we were protecting against a predator, an apex predator, like an animal, beast, or just other humans, maybe. We soothed and cuddled and kept each other safe. We felt safety. Oxytocin, probiotics like lactobacillus and bifido ones, they're shown to spike oxytocin. But I talk about how people can utilize oxytocin because it's released when we trust and when we have eye gazing. 10 minutes of running also gives us the same amount of oxytocin spike as 10 minutes of sex. And also seeing people trust, not only 2 people shaking hands, they have a surge of oxytocin, but also the people watching them. We're very visual. We use
there was a TED talk. There was a TED talk, and I had the guest on the show. People who hug 8 times a day tend to be happier with their life. That's a simple fix. That's a simple fix. So, it's so easy to do, especially, somebody's going to say, well, I don't have a partner in my life. That's fine. Hug a relative. Hug your father. Hug your mother. Hugging releases oxytocin.
Absolutely.
Orgasm releases oxytocin. Hug and have sex as often as possible. That's the key. Grace, it's so great to have you on the show. Please share the show. You never know who you're going to help. Let's see here. Brittany, love the content. I'm a functional medicine provider. Excuse me. And have been looking forward to trying to find Bifido product. I recommend Bifido longum to patients, but clearly it hasn't been a strong enough dose. So there you go. Now you know what
it has allies. Yeah, Bifido loves to be with other friends. It actually makes EPX. It's a sugar that they put on the outside of their cell wall. They feed other flora. Studies show Bifido longum feeds other flora in the gut between meals. There's a lot of cross feeding. So it takes carbs that other flora can't eat and then moves them. We have something called Bifido shunt. So a lot of people who can't take acellular or glucose, fructose, FODMAPs, single sugars, as well as dipeptide, 2 molecules of sugars, fructose, galactose, lactose,
right.
Others. It's because they don't have enough Bifido. Bifido, like longum and others like that are in here, they have a Bifido shunt. They take these mono sugars and di sugars and makes them into special carbs for other flora to eat. And they're very, very, in that way, generous and kind. And when we miss them, we're breaking a whole network of how food is distributed, energy is distributed among all the microbiome when they're not there. So people who can't eat sugar, if they get burping or pain even, or gas, bloating, and a lot of Candida and other overgrowths in the upper gut, H. pylori. It's because they're probably missing the bifido in the upper gut. So it's really great to open the capsules or take the powder we have and just like down it.
I chew
slowly.
them. I chew them. I do instinctively.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because I want to affect.
Yeah.
We did a show recently about the memory altering effects of cannabis, smoking cannabis. Happens because of the change in the oral microbiome that some forms of the THC actually affect. And they did this study on rodents, and when they blocked that microbe, the rodents didn't lose their short-term memory. So I figured because I do smoke a little weed once in a while. I find it better than drinking alcohol. And so I chew them because I'm like, okay, just in case I'm influencing the oral microbiome, let the bifido live in my mouth for a while.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, we hear people's cavities go away. I wouldn't do it right before bedtime, but yeah, oral application and again nasal really just helps our whole terrain. It's all connected.
I'll have to start doing. I'll start doing lines of it. Yeah, I'll do that. That'll affect my nose. Listen, Grace, it's always great to have you on the show. I already have an idea for a next show.
Okay, cool.
So there you go. One last time I'm going to say it. Please go to the website SHR. Well, actually, it's the proper website is thegutinstitute.com, correct?
Yeah.
But if you go using our link, at least we know that people are watching the show and reacting. shrnetwork.biz/gutreset. And if you find things you want to buy, SHR10 will save you 10% off all orders site-wide. Grace, we'll talk again soon, I promise, okay?
Thank you so much for having me on. What an honor. Thank you.
Take care. And then tomorrow I've got Anthony Roberts coming on. What you think you know about testosterone is all wrong. This is going to be a fascinating show, and I asked doctors to listen to this show because most doctors don't understand the pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics of testosterone replacement therapy. And we're going to teach people something. I promise you that if you watch this show tomorrow, you're going to say, I didn't know that at least 1,000 times during the show. So check it out. Don't forget to share this show because you never know who you're going to help. And we'll see you tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio.